And then so it means we are left with our next speaker, Joel Kaplan. He's the Chief Executive Officer from South Africa. He's a guy who just loves Googling things. So he's the Google man. Your Google man is here. Can we give him a round of applause?
Could I please ask if everyone could stand up? Please. Stand up. And for a moment, I'm going to treat you like one of our thinkers, which you'll understand in a bit. Could I please ask if everyone could please breathe in for 6 seconds, hold for 6 seconds, and then let go for 6 seconds. Let's do that 6 times.
Stop counting and start breathing.
Cool. Do you want to take a seat? Thank you, thank you. Has anyone got a blank piece of paper and a pen with you? If it would be alright, could everyone grab their pens? People online, grab your pens. When you're ready, what we're going to do is we're not going to think for a moment. So, repetitively, over and over and over again, can you please draw the figure 8? My mom used to make me do this because I couldn't sit still. And this is apparently a way to get me to calm down. And just to relax my mind before I had to study. I was doing this from the age of 9 or 10. And this was an exercise that I was taught to be able to just calm down and relax. So just for another 10 seconds or so. Right, when you're done, could I please ask if everyone could please close their eyes for a moment. This exercise will take 2 minutes. For a moment while you take deep breaths in and out, I want you to start counting backwards from 300. 300. 299. 298. And while you're counting backwards from 300, I want you to start visualizing your happy place. Whether that's an ocean, a mountain, your dogs, something that makes you happy. If you could see yourself in a year's time, what does that look like? What is that ideal version of yourself? What clothes are you wearing? Who are you talking to? What job have you got? Now if you open your eyes again, if I had to ask every single person here what they visualized, the answers wouldn't be the same. Every person's visualization, every person's dreams and desires are all relative. They're relative to you as a person because we all think relatively, yet we still continue to teach to that final exam. And from my short 5-year experience in education, while we all preach Sir Ken Robinson's schools kill creativity, while we preach the change that needs to take place, it seems that in my short 5 years, we're very good at using the buzzwords, we're very slow on the implementation. This is not an opportunity for me as a young millennial with white Converse shoes and a hoodie to come and criticize anyone here, but rather to work together, because as it stands, it seems that we actually have to work together in our own individual powers to be able to make that change. My name is Joel Kaplan and I founded Thought Africa 2 years ago. But before I founded Thought Africa 2 years ago, I founded a different company which completely failed. It tore my life apart. It created a lot of ripple effects. I still experience those ripple effects today from the mistakes that were made. But I've changed that statement from failure to temporary defeat. Something where I've realized that my success hasn't been achieved yet. And my success, if you'd have asked what is the definition of success, it's very relative too. And this just keeps on proving the point over and over again that every kid, every person thinks relatively, they believe in things relatively. No one looks at God the same. We don't know if we do or if we don't, whether you're in the same religion or not. If you pray or don't pray, you have a different iteration of that. Yet I repeat myself, we still seem to teach to that same final exam. So growing up, I was brought up in a bit of a disruptive household. My mother was an alcoholic. My parents got divorced. I grew up in a small flat. And I was fortunate enough to be mentored and be brought on as an apprentice from the age of 9 by a Scottish engineer named Mr. Barry. That was the only thing I could revert to him as. And if I was ever caught with my hands in my pocket, I would quite quickly have a screwdriver in my wrist because it implied I was doing nothing. And from the age of 9 to 14 or 15, he gave me the opportunity to be able to learn things that I would have never been able to learn in a classroom. It was a garage filled with tools from welding machines to saws, soldering irons, screwdrivers, and anything in between. It was an opportunity for me to learn that the mother of all inventions is necessity. And his wife had a stroke. Unfortunately, she was in a wheelchair, and he designed and created an all-terrain 6-wheeler wheelchair with an electric scooter that I was brought up for 4 years converting and being able to learn. And I did everything I could in my power at school, whether it was a headache, a sore stomach, or any other excuse to get out of the classroom and get back into that garage. Mr. Barry then, unfortunately or fortunately, retired in the Western Cape. I was in Durban at the time, and I'd lost that opportunity to have a garage and a space to go and work in. And I was a bit rebellious in high school. I did, again, everything that I could to get out of the classroom space. On a monthly basis, at least on a monthly basis, roundtable meetings were called for me when we would sit at square tables to discuss if I should actually continue being at school. I'd already had a little bit of a business at school. I was selling anything that I could, from water filters to computers to you name it. And it just helped me kind of grow that entrepreneurial ability. And it came from, again, necessity. I wasn't forced to have to sell things because I wanted to, but from the necessity of having to actually make money. I then did, again, throughout my high school career, did everything I could to get out of the classroom, only to finish school to throw myself straight back into the education space, which is kind of ironic. And I left school wanting to create a space that replicated Mr. Barry's garage, a space that didn't have a report card or progression where he was grading me on how I was improving or not improving, or what I was learning or not learning. So I started creating these maker spaces for schools, and that was the demise of my first business. We scaled way too quickly with a really cool concept, and unfortunately it just went totally belly up. Fast forward a little bit, I then scaled my life right down to the cheapest plot that I could find in Midrand. This is just 3 years ago, and I spent about 12 months on that plot where I'd met what a guy named I refer to as MacGyver, who had a workshop just like Mr. Barry's, as well as plenty of land to be able to grow vegetables, and it was an off-the-grid property where it relied on solar panels, borehole water, and maintenance to be done by the people that lived on it. If you're familiar with the term a kibbutz, which was born out of Israel, it's a space where it's community-driven, where you grow your own food, you have your own animals, and essentially it's a space where I guess you can be a little bit creative. So there the sustainability came in, and there was a bit of technology there, and I saw an opportunity to relaunch a business called Thought Africa. And I called it Thought Africa because in my personal belief, Africa is ripe with resources, from natural resources, minerals in the ground, yet we still seem to be exporting some of our greatest minds over to the United States, like Elon Musk. We seem to be exporting our minerals away so they can be processed and then re-imported into the country. And there's a few things that are a bit backwards, and Africa is this last continent that needs a technological boom. And I believe that the two components to be able to allow for that technological boom and revolution in Africa is going to be education and nutrition. So living on this farm, or this plot, you could say, I created an environment where I could invite kids from a local township called Diepsloot, who came through there, who I very quickly noticed, regardless of what schools they were at, had the same intellectual capacity as the kids I engaged with at private school. And this was phenomenal to see. I then grew the business a little bit more, and I started at Riversand's Incubation Hub at the end of Fourways, where I created a makerspace again for anyone in the homeschooling environment, and to essentially prototype and test a space that was a commercial school kind of, you could say, alternative. It was a space where there was offices for kids to use, there was the 3D printers, laser cutters, robots, you name it, it was theirs, along with all the other elements of growing your own vegetables and food. And then, as everyone's seen, COVID hit, and I decided I needed to pull the plug because I was unsure on what the prospect of things looked like. I immediately flew over to Cape Town the day before lockdown with 2 bags. I pulled in my Thule bag rule. I had 2 bags, my laptop bag and a clothes bag. I went and stayed somewhere very remote so I could figure out how I was going to do things going forward. And just in the few short days of lockdown taking place, I was monitoring social media and all the other companies in the education space and not seeing any solutions coming about where kids could continue their learning if they didn't have an internet connection or a tablet or a laptop or a teacher willing to avail their time to join on a Zoom call or a Google Hangout. There was just suddenly nothing available for millions of kids. So I created a program called Educare as part of Ford Africa. For maybe some might look at it as a way to keep me a little bit busy. I raised a little bit of money. I went out and gave away these packs. And I then suddenly realized that after 1 or 2 drops that the solution just wasn't good enough. There was no ways that I could possibly give out enough educational resources to get into kids' hands. And I was actually just wasting my time. So I went back to the drawing board and realized that I needed to come up with a solution which we call the start again theory, which has 3 circles in it, which is how do you create value, how do you create convenience, and how do you create support. And we really had to rack our brains around this, and it was quite a difficult one. Francois Nadir pointed out the solution a moment ago, so you might have an idea of what we did to scale it. But I was privileged enough to meet Matt Schiff, who's sitting at the back over there, who supported me on just trying to get a campaign going so we could raise additional funds so that we could give out more of these Educare packs, which in it has seeds, educational material, and then something called My Thinking Passport, which then connects kids to, drumroll, a WhatsApp chatbot with educational resources that they can get hold of, where all they have to do is send hi to a number, and they can suddenly start downloading a range of educational resources that's not maths, that's not English, geography, physical sciences, or anything like that, but rather what we refer to as just touch points of creativity. Touch points of creativity including learning how to upcycle things like tires, turning them into bins, or learning how to create a car out of upcycled plastic bottles, or learning how to create a water filter. And we had this rule that we had to create a challenge or an activity on 1 page, and that's continued to stay there. If someone submits an activity for us to do and put into it, if it can't fit in 1 page, it doesn't go in. We then launched an Educare challenge, where we then reached out to our private school market of kids, where we got kids to design activities for other kids. And we had amazing activities come through, including how to build your own logo, to attach it to some sort of a business, including exercise activities and much more. So this is where we are at right now with the solution around Educare. It's a 100% recyclable, or compostable, should I say, what we refer to as a milli mailer bag. It's made from cornstarch, so literally millis. And the first project, kids plant seeds, and they get to submit their projects, and in return, they earn data. So now this is an opportunity for us to create a cycle, and a continued cycle, where kids join this WhatsApp chatbot, they send photos through to us, and immediately we start rewarding them with data. And now more recently, thanks to 1 or 2 sponsors, we've been able to give out laptops, tablets, cell phones, and a range of other things. This is still in its infancy. It's still 6 months in only with this project and everything that we're doing. But it's something that we're very passionate about. So Educare is really close to our hearts, but unfortunately it's not sustainable for us. As an entrepreneur, I've never been the type to go cap in hand to corporates or to people to ask for funding to keep a project going. So then I had to start working out how do we then allow for our own business to make this project self-sustaining. So we launched our Thinkers platform. At this stage, just as some reference, luckily enough I've had some experience in the educational space, so I had a small network I could share things to. So our solution, we put on a triangle of importance, I guess, which is 1, our Thinkers platform at the bottom, 2 is our Educare project, and then 3 is our WhatsApp chatbot, and they're all tied to one another, where we are now getting kids to meet thought leaders. So we refer to the kids as thinkers, and we refer to anyone with a passionate skill or knowledge as a thought leader that is willing to share that skill or knowledge. So now the idea of wanting to become a pilot or become an engineer or becoming a doctor is not a far-fetched idea, where you can actually now get direct access through our platform to communicate with these people. For want of a better word, it's a marketplace of knowledge This is not a foreign concept. There's many other places exist like Udemy, Skillshare, Coursera, etc. that connect people with knowledge and people wanting to learn knowledge. But I think where we've managed to kind of make a little bit of a difference, it's a Skillshare platform for Africa. It's not charged in dollars. You know the faces behind the creators of it. We put videos out there all over it, and we really try as much as possible to engage with our thinkers. So they as thinkers can eventually become thought leaders. Sorry, I'm going to take a small little break here. We decided last night, I'm going to sidetrack a bit, we prepared so many different presentations for today. We had about 3 weeks to prepare. We had presentations, planned speeches, and my colleague and I decided last night on our drive back to Harder Beer Sport for an hour that this wasn't a marketing opportunity to come and sell something to anyone or to use a fancy presentation or fancy videos and our animations that we've got, but rather an opportunity to have an authentic conversation around education. I feel like the people in this room, maybe listening online, people watching this video post this, have got the power to work together to make a change and to start actually making that change happen. And that change for us is that when we ask kids at a young age, what do you want to do when you grow up? And you will all ask that, and you might not be in the positions right now that you thought you would be when you were younger. But where's the follow-through? Why are we not allowing those children to follow their passion, follow what they're interested in doing? We talk about teaching maths or physical science and English and getting marks to come up, but kids don't really care, mainly because the content's not relative to them. And that's just the unfortunate, uncomfortable truth around this. So we constantly say between Matt and I that we're not, I'm not qualified, just by the way, in anything. That's why I was introduced as great at Googling things, and that's why we know that we have to reach out to people like yourselves and people within the education space to work either with us or alongside us or together to be able to start making that change. We don't know exactly what that change looks like. I'm not here with a solution. I'm not here with saying exactly this is what needs to be done. If it were up to me, I would want the entire system scrapped and overhauled. I don't see the point in having a curriculum that was brought into South Africa during colonial times, which is sometimes a little bit difficult to hear, but that is the truth behind the system. Not much has changed. Don't mean to insult anyone, but if we look at the definition of Amalusi, who's this major kind of like that, everyone's a bit scared. It means Amalusi coming to visit our school. It means in the Nguni language, if I'm not mistaken, a herder, implying that everyone on the other side are sheep, and you've got to follow through with that. It also means someone who carries wisdom within a community. So there's two meanings there. So I'm inviting everyone here in this room now. It seems a little bit quiet. I asked you to stand and breathe and to get a little bit of blood going. But if we can try and start a conversation, really express your opinion around education and what you actually believe needs to take place to change it as such. I don't want to use the buzzwords like implementing 21st century thinking or STEAM or computational thinking. It's getting too much now. I actually can't handle it anymore when we hear buzzwords. It's driving us insane. So I'm inviting you, please, what is your honest opinion on what we can start doing to make this change? How do we allow kids to follow their passion?
Well, I think personally sorry, my name's Cherise. I think personally, asking children, what do you want to be when you grow up, is already putting something in their brain that's forcing them to think in a certain direction. Whereas asking children rather, what problems do you want to solve when you grow up, changes the way that they think immediately. And especially if you ask that question when they're younger. I've already seen a difference, just changing that question.
It's great to hear that we're all doing it already. There's a start.
That's great.
And I feel like that what we're creating, when someone asks us if we're a company or community, I'd like to say that Thought Africa is somewhat of a movement, where we're really wanting to start getting people to think long and hard about why are you actually doing this? So why are you asking these questions in a test? Why are you issuing a certain assignment? I heard the greatest thing today from a school visit that we did earlier. The head of academics decided to scrap every other exam except for languages, mathematics, and physical science. That's it, and the rest are scrapped. Geography, history, life orientation, and so on. I don't want to throw them under the bus, but apparently it's working great for them. They've seen a great improvement. Anyone else? Anyone online that wants to share? I'd love to get the input. Again, we're going to have to work together to make this work. As Francois said, it's a 4D soccer field that we all need to play in. Got any questions online? There's a lot of people here. I'm going to worry about the people in the room. No offense to anyone online. Sorry.
Just a comment.
Yes, have a comment. 2. 1, 2.
I've got a brother who also thinks differently. So he wants to do music. Well, in fact, he decided he's going to do music. And every time you say, so we forced him to do a law degree, which he's busy with. And every time you explain why it's important for him to do it, he'll say, well, who said I'm going to fall? Because the idea is at least you have something to fall back on.
Yeah.
So the thinking is completely different. So he's into music, and if it doesn't work, he will look at something around technology because he says it's the only thing that makes sense.
But, I mean, my question back to that is why not triple down on what you're good at and what you're passionate at? And I've had to do that as well under the circumstances that sometimes get uncomfortable, even financially in some instances.
Yeah.
But what keeps you going through to the end and continuing is that your passion for it.
Yeah. And I think that's what we all end up doing, right? So at the end of the day, when you retire, you do the thing that you are afraid to do, or you were told you can't do, because who makes a living out of that? So yeah, times are changing, and it will be interesting to see what the next 10 years will look like in terms of universities and studying and those geographies and history subjects.
Out of interest, who knows who has the power to change things in the education system in South Africa? Who's that person that can pull the plug and make a change?
I think they all let us on the commission.
Yes, Nav.
I think you've got to be very careful about that. There's vested interests going back hundreds of years. And I think the difficulty is the vested interest. And unless there's an ability to change the vested interest, I mean, there are people printing these books they've got their factory set up to print these books. You've got people who've trained to teach this way. You've got buildings built to train this way. So to change it's like trying to turn a super tanker. You turn the rudder now, and it gets 300 kilometers before it starts to turn.
There's a few other countries that have done the change, where they've completely pulled the plug and started again. And that's why I speak about the start again theory. And
Well,
the
I
problem...
think COVID
Yeah.
has given a huge opportunity to make a change.
Sure.
It's been a reset in a lot of situations, and I think that's the opportunity we sit with now. And yes, I think one of our statements was, it's really stupid when we are doing the same thing and expecting different results. And we're still doing the same thing, expecting different results. We're not changing
And I
anything.
think for the organizations that have been around for a long time, i.e. as you refer to printing companies or anything like that, will adapt, like everyone's had to adapt. I mean, if you look at it, Microsoft has recently made an announcement where staff no longer have to go into offices at all. Do you know how many jobs that's going to result in being lost from people that drive people to work within Palo Alto? Apparently, I think there's like 7,000 people that get bussed in a day. Facts might be incorrect there. There's people that make the food at their offices. There's insurance companies that are part of the offices. The people that service the offices to make them run. So suddenly they're also going to have to now make an adaptation. So yes, you're right. COVID has given a great excuse to make a change. But yeah.
Hi, thank you, John, for a very inspiring talk. Unfortunately, I'm not from the education sector. I'm from the tech sector, so I really enjoyed what you spoke about. And speaking about the relevance of education as we see it today, I'm reminded of a few case studies I just want to point out to you. Some of you may know Sia Kolisi, who is probably the Springbok captain, but very few of you may know Sia Kuza. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He's Koza, I think. But he's a boy from the Eastern Cape who actually has a planet named after him. That's how important it is. Go and Google that. But as a boy, he saw a plane flying up, and then he told his mother that he dreams of being an astronaut. But a long story short is that through a project that he worked through, he was actually presented it at NASA and he was given an award there. There's another student that came from a rural area as well. I forget his name, but I heard him present at a conference. But at grade 8, his mother bought him a computer, and he was programming, and he was earning about 80,000 rands a month. By the time he was in grade 12, he was approached by a company. He didn't go to university. He was the CEO of a company. He is now programming and heading up companies for a lot of blue chip companies. Lastly, how are you going to teach students at 6 years old who are earning 1 million rands? Go and check on YouTube. They are 6 years old that have 1 million followers. So this is a new paradigm of us thinking about how we're going to teach in this new era, so to speak. Thank you.